Hello and welcome to usbiologyteaching.com. Today you are going to learn some huge time-saving tips for teaching biology. You deserve a 40-hour work week just like everybody else. So let's learn how we're going to do that. A little bit about myself. My name is Brad. I am the founder of US Biology Teaching. I started US Biology Teaching a few years back after completing my master's degree in curriculum and instruction. So throughout my coursework, I remember sitting in the room with my colleagues debating the issues of education. And every single class, the number one problem that was holding teachers back from improvement and the problem that was impacting attrition was time. So in order to address that for biology teachers, I built a curriculum and community here at US Biology Teaching. So welcome. And here, just to kind of give you an idea of what we offer, there you can actually access a full biology curriculum. And we actually have like a private support group on Facebook, and we have forums where you could share materials with other teachers. And we also have some trainings like you'll see here, in addition to all the blog stuff that we release on a regular basis. So welcome. And when you registered, I sent you an email with a link to this page where you could view this video, but I also sent some other links to our Facebook page and Facebook groups where you can become a follower. And on those pages I actually post some things like some recent updates in scientific research, or some things like just quick tips for teaching, and some little tidbits that I share on my blog, and less formal stuff regarding teaching. Maybe I'll come across a sale or something that might be of interest to biology teachers, and I'll post that kind of stuff. So if you haven't become a follower, it'd be a good idea to go over there, stop by and check it out. I think you'll enjoy some of the stuff that I put on there. Alright, so chances are you are here for a number of reasons. You're here because mostly there's just not enough time in the day to do your job. So looking at the choices below on the screen here, you can see which situation might apply most to you. So for most people that show up to this training, I'm guessing that you are one of these four things. You are teaching multiple courses. You are a first-time biology teacher. Or you want to save time and reduce stress levels and actually enjoy teaching. Or you want to spend less time at work and more time with your family and friends. Some of you might be in the position where all of those things on the previous slide applied to you. Now, today what I'm going to teach you is how you can save time teaching biology so you can actually be home at a reasonable time. So as a teacher, you have so much to do. You have to plan for lessons. You have to worry about student accountability. You have to worry about classroom management. You have extracurriculars that you might be participating in, and duties during your planning time that you have to take care of. You have, of course, papers to grade and emails to answer. You have supplies that you need to order. You have copies that you need to make, student tracking forms to fill out, labs to set up, glassware to clean, professional development classes to finish up, administrative initiatives that you need to integrate into your lesson plans. The list could go on. And I'm not trying to get your stress levels up right now just thinking about all those things, but I am going to show you a few very effective ways to reduce the time it takes to do some of those tasks so you can spend time dealing with all the other items in school rather than on your own time after school, when you could be with your family and friends or doing it, whatever it is that you have to take care of or want to take care of. So at the very end of this presentation, I'm going to show you how to find the more help that will drastically reduce the amount of time you spend working beyond your 40-hour week. So stick around, and I think you'll really enjoy this presentation. I hope you learn a lot as I go through this. So in addition to those things, I'm going to be offering some bonuses for you just for sticking around. So the bonuses will be slides to the presentations, 2 weeks of lesson plans, our prefixes and suffixes with 9 quizzes already done for you, in addition to the Quizlets. For each of those quizzes, we have Quizlets that go with them that are already done for you. All you have to do is stick around at the end and you'll get a link to a page that has all those documents and all those Quizlets ready to go for you. Also, our macromolecule boxing activity. It's one of the most popular items that I had on Teachers Pay Teachers when I actually did that. It's kind of what got me thinking about starting this website, that whole activity. A lot of people really loved it, and it kind of got me thinking that I needed to be doing more for biology teachers. And I also built a peer collaboration tool that's really awesome. It allows peers to evaluate each other, and it calculates all of the percentages or averages or total points, however you want to take that data and use it. It calculates all that stuff for you in the background. So you could have students grading each other in a lab, and as a result, throughout the year, you could have a tally, a running tally of how a student is collaborating with their peers based on their peers' evaluation from each other. So it's a really cool tool. There's a video that goes along with that to show you exactly how to use it. You're going to get all of these things just for sticking around and watching this presentation. So you're going to get a lot of time-saving techniques and also some really fun, cool stuff that you're going to find very useful in your classroom. I will also be giving you guys at the end of this presentation, to kind of help jumpstart your time saving, a timely offer on our curriculum. It's not something you have to take advantage of in order to get a lot of value from this training, but it's there for you if you're interested. So thanks for being here. We're going to dive right into these tips. So let's get started. I want you to take a second and I want you to think about what it is that is taking up most of your time in your day. Is it being bogged down by grading? Or is it lesson plans? Is it setting up labs? Is it classroom management? Or administrative tasks like IEP paperwork? Early in my career, I think lesson planning and just grading took up most of my planning time. And when I read posts in our Facebook group and on our Facebook page, I see that many teachers feel the same way. One strategy you can use right out of the gate is to kind of just sit down and take some time each day over the course of a week and try to map out where your time is going when you're at work. And that will give you a good understanding of how you can work to improve that. So after thinking about your time and where it is going, I want to just kind of tune you into the consequences of that last time so you understand the true value of this presentation. So staying late and trying to keep your head above water. So what that's doing, and that's probably going to increase not just only stress on you, but you and your family. It could also impact your long-term health because you're not making it to the gym like you wanted to, or just the stress is adding up and it's impacting you overall. Some of the tasks do not get done. So it can lead to administration or colleagues putting pressure on you because you're just not responding to maybe their emails or not getting stuff turned in on time because you have no time to do anything. And lastly, you're probably having to sacrifice the quality of your instruction. This is true for a lot of my fellow colleagues who teach 4 different preps. Some people I know teach up to 6 different preps, some 7 even I've heard. 7 different preps in a given day. It's really difficult for you to do a quality job of all of those preps without losing your mind. So throughout my coursework and my master's degree, the issue of time came up over and over, and it was definitely the source of a lot of issues in education right now. So It's not all over though. You can take back your time. So regardless of where you are losing the most time, you can get it back and you can prevent becoming one of those teachers who are just burnout and leaving the profession. You can actually do this job and you can really enjoy it and still live a normal life. So hopefully you're ready to take back time. We're going to dive right in now to some of the strategies, and we're going to start with grading, the dreaded grading. So some people really enjoy grading. I am not one of those people. I give my students feedback in a lot of different ways, and grading for me is just one of those things that I'm just not a huge fan of. Of course, you need to be able to give students feedback, and that's part of the teaching process, but for me, it's my least favorite part. So the first assessment tip that I want to talk to you about is the use of technology. And I think you need to start considering how you can use technology to your advantage. We used to have those old Scantron machines. I know many schools still do. I remember I used to have to fight for Scantron papers just because the papers were so expensive and the school was really restrictive of how they handed them out. But the good news is you no longer need them. One of my favorite apps to use is ZipGrade, and it basically just converts the camera on your phone or your iPad or whatever device you want to use into a scanner. And you can see in that picture on the left, it actually works very well. So ZipGrade provides printable bubble sheets and you can even get really creative. So the good thing is though, they're printable, so you don't have to worry about fighting people for the Scantron slips like I used to have to. But you could also get creative in how students bubble in. Students could bubble in with ZipGrade multiple bubbles at the same time. So you could have choices like not just A, B, C, D, or E, but students could even fill in bubbles AB or AC, AD on the same line, and it will mark it for you properly. So any matching that you'd want to do that has more than 5 choices, this ZipGrade app can handle that for you, up to something like 15 choices. So it's great for things like labeling the cells, process of protein synthesis, or any other matching that you might want to do. It only takes a second to grade each of those papers using ZipGrade. So all you need to do is kind of hover your phone over, line up the corners, and it is quicker than you would think. I know when I first started using it, I was skeptical that it wouldn't be very quick, but it is super quick and it is super effective. Another thing that you can do is use an online grading system. Another one that I like to use as well is Socrative. Again, these are just, I'm sure there are other competitors out there that you can go to if you don't like these brands. Socrative is just one of the many different platforms that you can use. So you don't have to use these, but you should definitely start to think about how you're going to take technology, harness it to help you save time. I really like Socrative and Quizlet for students to use. If your students aren't one-to-one with devices, Quizlet can take your vocabulary list and it can automatically create quizzes for you that you can print. I have actually created a video on how to do that over on the blog if you want to check it out. So both Quizlet and Socrative have great learning activities that students can do if you're one-to-one. There are also Quizlet. You can also print out flashcards, so you don't have to be one-to-one for that either. I like Quizlet because it has a lot of vocabulary development, and in biology we know that's critical. So in our curriculum, I have included a Quizlet with every single one of our units, so you don't have to worry about using or creating your own. They're already done for all of our vocabulary terms. So that means you can just log in and you can print out any vocabulary quiz that you would want. Even if you're not one-to-one, you could just print out the quiz, have them fill out their ZipGrade, and quickly get their papers graded. another thing that I forgot to mention here is that each of these three apps, they give you really good feedback. So these tools also give you data that you can analyze, and you can look at right away where the instruction was lacking, and you could then make adjustments to help better serve your students. So the next tip that I have for you today is you do not have to grade everything. This is a big one. I think sometimes as teachers we just think that we have to grade everything, but it really is not sustainable. For me, I like to be upfront with my students. I tell them that I only take samples of their work and that I do not grade everything that they do. And I remind them that of that several times. So some students will ask the question, will this be graded? And I really just respond, I'm not sure yet, I haven't decided. And that I also tell them that everything that we do is for learning and it is valuable for them to do. So a couple of other tips in line with this mindset is to not be afraid to use check marks or stamps. Just give your students credit for trying to make sure, just for trying. And you want to make sure, though, that when you look at your grade book, it reflects the student's knowledge and understanding of the content in your course. You do not want your grade book to be all fluff, and that's not what I'm promoting with using check marks. But you need to make sure that you have a good balance to your grade book. Give students credit for doing work, but you also have to have a lot of meat behind your grade. So they have to really kind of weight those assessments a bit more heavily, because that is really the end game rather than the practice of the worksheets. You want to feel confident that when you look at that grade book, that when you see an A, that student really knows their stuff. When you see a C, that student kind of knows their stuff. And of course, if a student is failing, is that reflective of a student not knowing the content? If you do, though, if you can do that and you're still able to give students effective feedback to help them grow, everything's going to be fine. Again, you don't have to grade everything to do that. There's a lot of other ways to kind of get feedback. So let's look at the other tips. So one thing you can do, especially if you're using a writing assignment, is to ask students to identify key components that you're looking for. If you design your assessments so they are easier to grade, it's going to save you time in the long run. So if you're using the writing, have students color code. You could try the trade and grade method, where students will kind of exchange papers with their classmates. Before doing this, make sure students are using some sort of code on top of their assignment, so it is not their name and people don't know who the paper actually came from. And I don't use any trade and grade in the actual grade book. If I'm doing trade and grade, it is going to be so students actually have practice using a rubric, so students have perspective on what a teacher looks for, so students can see what the state might look for when it comes time to grading their written responses. So it's all really just practice for the students when I use these types of things. And I think that them grading gives them an opportunity to kind of take a different perspective. And also, it gives them feedback in a very quick manner that you would not be able to provide otherwise. So use that one with caution, but it can definitely be a valuable practice for students. So at the beginning of the school year, another strategy is to assign the students a number that corresponds to their order in the grade book. So if the person's last name starts with an A, chances are they're at the top. So they would have a number 1, and those with Z's or something similar or W's or something like that would be at the end of the grade book in the 20s, 26 or something. So when you collect all your papers, you can actually organize those papers by number, and they're alphabetized automatically for you. In fact, you can even have a student do it to save you even more time. So that's another good strategy to help save you time. We're buying seconds at a time, sometimes minutes at a time, as we discuss some of these strategies. So more time savers include just doing spot checks for your student understanding. So using a variety of formative assessments all the time and being in tune to the information that you're able to gather from your students, you can then determine, does the student understand the concept? What concept do they get? What concept do they not get? Using these little formative assessments, and you can see a whole list of some things up on the slide there, you can then quickly assess them. Students are getting feedback very quickly. They understand whether or not they know the content or if they do not know the content. And it's not something you have to put into the grade book, but you still get the feedback that you need, and so do students. One example that I like to use is the beach ball vocabulary activity that I have on my blog. Using the beach ball, basically what I do is I take a marker and I write down a few key terms on the ball using a dry erase marker, and then I toss the ball around. So I tell the students, wherever your left thumb lands, whatever color that is, and whatever words on that color, tell me one thing that you know about that word. Or sometimes I'll ask them to give me the definition. Sometimes I'll ask for a 1 or 2 word definition, just to help them process the information. Sometimes I'll ask them to give me a description or an example. And as we do this, there's a lot of repetition. I make it so everybody in the class gets a chance. And there are times when we have the same word 5 times in a row. Well, when that happens, I take that as an opportunity to calculate the odds of that actually happening. And then I could draw on that later when we talk about probability and genetics. So there's a lot of opportunity here to not just teach vocabulary, but also probability. And really quickly, you're getting that feedback. It's a quick way to kind of get a feel for what your students know with the content. You could also use another strategy like just quick hitters, like ask the students to stand up. If you're wearing blue, stand up. Tell me one thing you learned from the day. You can also use like note cards with names on them. Some people use what they call fairness sticks or popsicle sticks. The concept is the same, just being fair and kind of randomly calling on people and asking them questions from the day, from the class period. I prefer the cards because they actually allow me to easily shuffle them. So even if I've called your name, you're not safe. And I also like it because I could write things like student interests and their birthdays on there, and it helps me build student relationships. I can also then make it seem like when I'm assigning lab groups, I kind of shuffle the deck as I go. And I can quickly establish lab groups as I walk around to each lab table. I kind of just throw their cards on the table, call out their names, and the students think it's completely random, but when I see certain names that I know don't work well together, I make a switch and students never know that I've even made that switch prior to actually calling out the names. So really good strategy that I recommend, and it saves time with grouping and trying to figure out how you're going to do that. And you get a lot of feedback using these different types of formative assessment strategies that you don't have to enter into the gradebook. But students are still getting feedback, they're still able to grow. In fact, they're getting immediate feedback in most cases. So great strategies for time savers. So another strategy that I like to use is just using a clipboard. So during instruction, there is plenty of time when students are working independently. That is an opportunity for you to grade their work. A little bit of grading here and there adds up to be a lot of time that you're not staying late after school. And I know some of you thinking it's not possible since during that time students could be, you need to be circulating the room, making sure students are on task, asking questions to students, making sure that everybody's off task. So you take your clipboard and just stand near them. Your proximity will help those students stay on task. So my next tip is to just grade one thing at a time. Now, this doesn't apply every time you're grading something, but it can be used a lot. So what I mean is, when I am grading something like a major assessment, a unit exam that has writing, a lot of writing, written responses on the back or wherever you have them, I take those tests and I open them up all to the same page, and I grade one question at a time. So I'll grade all of question number 1s, and then I'll go back and grade all the question number 2s. And I actually lay my papers out across the lab, so it allows me to get some extra steps in. I'm not sitting down constantly. This would occur, of course, during my planning period, but it helps speed things up. The fact that I'm focusing on just one thing at a time allows me to make sure that I'm mastering how I'm grading that. It helps me be more consistent in how I'm grading that particular item, because sometimes with those written responses, you have certain built-in criteria that might not be on the rubric, and you have to make some subtle adjustments in your head as you go through. And doing this all at once rather than going through one page or one test at a time, you are more apt to remember exactly how you graded every single person and making sure you can be consistent and fair as possible. The next time-saving tip is developing systems. So systems are going to become what I call time investments. The two main ones that I want to talk about are organization and training students. So one of the biggest things I struggle with as an educator is organization. I'm not a messy person by any means, but I definitely lack organizational skills. So over my career, I learned to become more conscientious about that, and I honed in on that deficit and tried to get better at it. And over time, I've become better at organization, and it has bought me a lot of time in the long run. So one thing I have done organizationally in my classroom that has been huge is organizing the lab materials and adding commonly used materials to each station. So I did not always do this, and to be honest, it's crazy to think that I did not. It's so simple, and it's a huge time saver. So in the pictures on this slide, you can see how I organize the materials. Now, when I actually set up a lab, I have everything that I need except for a few things that might be specific to that individual lab. So the way I organize is basically I use the drawers at my lab station, and in those drawers I have them organized by kind of category. So on the top drawer I have all the cleaning materials. In the second drawer, anything that would be used for measurement. In the third drawer is just typical glassware, like test tubes that students could use, or funnels. And in the bottom drawer, I have things like dissecting supplies that I keep locked. So with those things there, anytime I need to set up a lab, I know I have all those materials already at the lab station, and I can just worry about getting the lab materials that are specific to that lab. If you don't have drawers, just get some bins and put your common materials in those bins. It'll save you a lot of time. Another tip that I recommend you doing is to reset your materials from lab before you put everything away for the next year. So what I mean is, if you used up a material, put it back, replace it, replenish it if you can. If you can't, make a note I also like to include notes in any lab bin that I have that tells me what I need to do, instructions about what went well, what did not go well, any subtle changes I might want to make to the instructions, how to organize, how to space things. All those little tips I put in the bin and I lock them away for the next year. So when I open that up, I know exactly what happened in that lab, and I could remember how to better address it this time. I also like to keep a running list of supplies that I need to repurchase throughout the year. So these are little things that you could do. They do take some time up front, but these are time investments because they do take a little time now to set up, but once you have them down, it's pretty much smooth sailing. So the next thing you see there is training your students. I actually provide a list of materials in the top drawer at each lab station, and that tells students exactly what is in each category. It's important so students can not just find materials, but also put them where they belong after they clean them. So the first opportunity that you get to have your students in lab, you need to train them on how the lab should look when you are done. I have to save at least 10 to 15 minutes the first couple of times where I like to save about 10 to 15 minutes at the end of our first couple of labs just to make sure I have time to inspect their stations. I don't let them excuse themselves from the lab. When they feel as though they are properly cleaned, I have them raise their hand and wait for an inspection from me. So I have them keep all the drawers open, and if you do not have drawers, use whatever you have available, like a box or a bin or whatever. But you want to check to make sure they're not putting dirty stuff back in there. I also emphasize that the materials need to be clean, dry, and in the correct location. And I do reward my students when they do this right. This saves me so much time because as I go throughout the year, I don't have to worry about my lab stations getting cleaned up. Students do it right. And it is a little bit up front to make sure you're emphasizing that and making sure you're checking it and rewarding them when they do well. So I'll reward them with a stamp, a sticker, or even a homework pass if their group is done and it looks really great. So I'll take like the best stations, nicely organized, and I'll reward them. So in our biology curriculum, I actually have notes about some of these strategies and included in the lesson plans to help remind our members about when they should be doing these types of things. So earlier we talked about all the different things that you have to do as a teacher. So one strategy that you can use to kind of save time after school is to kind of structure your class and your lessons in a way that buys you time to work on some of those tasks while students are present. So let's take a look at some of those things. So thinking about things like email, IEP data collection, and grading, we talked about how you could grade using a clipboard, but you also have to do things like taking attendance. All of these things take time, and you should be able to take care of them while the students are present. So in our biology curriculum, the lessons are structured in a way that it establishes a routine for your students. Your students will come into class every single day and have something to do. So in the curriculum and what I do in my classroom is I provide a daily agenda for all the students so that they know exactly what they are going to be doing for the day, and so that you don't have to answer that question about what am I going to do today or what are we doing today in class. Everything you have could be projected, and I recommend that you write your to-do list or your lesson for the day, what students are going to be doing for the day on the board. Just that for one, it reduces anxiety for students so they know exactly what to expect out of your class during that day. But having a procedure in place at the beginning of class, so students enter my classroom, they have a bell ringer to complete. Every single day, there's something to do. And they know the expectation because I establish it early. They come in, they sit down, and they get started right away on whatever the bell ringer is that day. Sometimes it's a video, sometimes it's a worksheet, sometimes it's an activity, whatever it may be, but they know exactly what to do, and that when the bell rings, they need to be getting started. And I remind them of it. So during those times, I'm taking attendance, I'm entering grades, I'm responding to emails. I'm also, of course, checking on the class, making sure progress is being made. I'm using proximity whenever I can. So I might be grading with a clipboard and also using proximity at the same time to make sure students are on task, but I'm also getting things done at the same time. So in the curriculum, and what I like to do is I like to have balanced and varied lessons. You don't want to just give your students worksheet after worksheet. So you remember you're going to need to grade that stuff. So every worksheet you give them is a possibility of a worksheet you are going to need to grade. Unless, of course, you just throw a check mark on it. Instead, I like to use a variety of activities that's going to require your students to create and do. And when you look at a curriculum, that's a lot of what students are doing. So when students are creating models, conducting research, building presentations, performing labs, and other independent or group activities, then that gives you more opportunities to take advantage of getting stuff done in the classroom. So once one strategy that helps you become more efficient at completing tasks is actually going to be batching your work. So by batching, I mean that you basically block out a segment of time without distractions. So you can do things like let's say you want to take some time to answer emails. You block out a segment of time to do that. You go through, you answer all those emails immediately. That's one thing that I like to kind of save for a time period when I cannot be distracted. So I'll save that for the end of the day, my emails. But of course, with our profession, we have to check in on them periodically to make sure nothing's come up throughout the day. But the idea here is that when you sit down and batch your content, you want to focus solely on one task at a time. For instance, at the start of your planning period, you might have a huge to-do list. And what you can do is make sure you write those things down and then prioritize them. And then you tack them one item at a time. Turn off your notifications, silent your email, and put your head down and get it done. Doing this, you can even set a time limit for each task to ensure you keep yourself moving and you're not getting distracted by mundane things that really aren't going to matter in the long run. So you can even schedule time slots each week. For example, you may work on lesson planning for half of your planning period and then grading on the other half on Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday, your day might look like planning, grading, IEP data, and parent contact. Thursday, it might be planning and grading. Friday, it might be planning and making copies. Of course, this is just a general outline, and many of your planning periods will look much more complex. One thing that's common in all of them is that each day you need to make sure you're walking into your class with a plan. And one thing I can help you tremendously with that will help free up a lot of time is the planning part. So when you look at the breakdown of your planning period, how much time is actually lesson planning? And I think if we look at a breakdown of your day, you will see that most of what you do in a given day is going to be either broken down into planning or grading, which is why a lot of this training was geared towards how to effectively manage when you can grade and when you cannot. or when you can grade and how to grade that effectively and quickly. So looking at it realistically from a new teacher perspective, if you're a new teacher or a teacher new to biology, you need to first figure out what standards need to be taught, and then you need to build or find a presentation to deliver the content. You got to find supporting worksheets. All of this stuff has to happen during the planning period, where you have the ability to have sustained focus, unlike the classroom, where you can actually you can do grading during the class much more easily than you can do lesson planning. So when we think about what's involved in planning, we have to identify and read the standards. We have to find or build a presentation, and that can definitely take like 3 to 5 hours. So when we think about how our week is broken down, a big chunk of that time period is going to be dedicated to the planning, especially if you're new or just teaching biology for the first time. And even if you're a second or third or fourth year teacher, if you haven't kind of structured and organized your content each year as you went through, then you're pretty much starting from scratch each year, or trying to find better materials. So this planning period, it becomes strictly planning, and we are left to do all those other tasks on your own. So after you make your presentation, you're going to spend 15 to 20 minutes per class period probably finding a worksheet that is going to support the curriculum and be aligned to the curriculum. Then you're going to have to type up a formal plan so your administration knows that you're doing your job. And then you also have to make sure you have an assessment, so that takes a great deal of time to create. So when we look at a single unit, we have 10 hours built into creating one single unit, and 10 hours is definitely on what I think would be on the low end of how long it would take. So it would definitely take between 10 and 15 hours to plan a unit. So where does that leave your scheduled planning time? Is it possible to do everything else that you need to do? Definitely not, especially if you're a new teacher, and especially if you have multiple subjects to teach or multiple preps. But the question is there hope for me in my teaching career? And the answer is yes. So as a new teacher or an experienced teacher just starting out with biology, you're going to have to invest some time up front to get time later. So even with all the time-saving tips I gave you, it's going to be a struggle to get home without any work or at a reasonable hour and still plan effective lessons and do all the other required things that you have. But you have options. You can slowly, progressively build your curriculum, being sure to keep it organized. And if you're interested in building a curriculum, check out our blog. I have a video on how to create a cohesive biology curriculum along with a lesson plan template that follows the 5E model. So you can check that out. So over time, what you can do as a teacher is you can build that curriculum yourself, and you can start to make sure you keep it organized. And that time investment up front is going to pay off huge in the long run. So over time, you'll have a curriculum, and you'll be able to just worry about things like grading and making copies and answering emails and filling out IEP data collection sheets. And that is how some experienced teachers are actually able to leave school and go home at a reasonable time. So another option that you have available to you is our curriculum. So one thing I'm offering people who watch this video, obviously if you're watching this video, you're strapped for time, is to become a member of this community where we have everything already done for you. All you would then have to worry about is managing the other things that are within your classroom. Doing the grading, you have to worry about answering emails, but all of that stuff now can be done during your planning time, and with the other tips that you're implementing that you learned through this presentation, you should be able to easily walk out of the school at a reasonable time. We have created throughout this curriculum also like assessments that are really easy to grade. All of them are able to use ZipGrade. All of them are really easy to grade. And that was designed purposefully because the goal of this curriculum is to help teachers save time, enjoy teaching, and engage their students. So we have balance and variation in our units and even routines established in the lesson plans so you can buy that time like we discussed throughout the presentation. The curriculum is written to the next generation science standards for grades 9 through 12, and since you've taken time to watch this webinar, you have this special offer available to you if you use the coupon code. So this code will get you a yearly license plan for $279 per year, or you can use our affordable monthly plan if $279 a year is not going to work for you. And if you're interested, you can sign up. You can see the link there, usbiologyteaching.com, and you could click on the button that says Full Biology Curriculum or Biology Lesson Plans, and it will take you to this page, or you can just type in the link directly. If you're watching this in the future, try the code. It may work, but if it does not, it has expired. The code is webinar 2018. Type it in exactly as you see it, or you will not get the rate that has been displayed. Just a quick note, our members really do love it. Here are a couple of things that some of the people are saying. Janice mentioned, she said, thank you so much for these resources. They're incredible. And Crystal said, these resources are fantastic for practical application in the classroom, and that's what we are going for. Your lessons are awesome, and I appreciate having a helping hand, and you're the best resources, best place for resources that I've ever found. Thank you, from Teresa. So some people have the question like, what's covered? Here you can see a list of all of our units covered. Pretty much if you teach biology 1 or regular biology or state assessed biology, these are the topics that you need to make sure you cover, and everything is here. We also do create units for teachers as they are needed that are within a biology curriculum, or biology standards. So if, for example, if your state had a specific area that or a unit that is not seen here, we can create that for you before you get to that topic. Chances are we already have a lot of those materials around, but we've designed this curriculum based on the next generation science standards. When I compare these standards to the states, they're very similar with almost no differences between what's covered in this content and what's covered in most states. So our units include detailed lesson plans as mentioned throughout this presentation. They also have daily agendas that help your students know what's going on, the bell ringers that were mentioned that help get your students on task and ready to go, the presentations with guided notes so you don't have to worry about your students taking tons of time to write down notes. There's just a couple of blanks that highlight the key words that students have to write down. It'll allow you to go through those presentations in a way that is, a decent pace. So your students you're not sitting around waiting for students to write stuff down. All the printables, labs, worksheets, our assessments that we have version A's and version B's, and along with that we also have modified versions for students with IEPs. All the bell-to-bell activities, video connections, we have technology integration, lots of Quizlets, a few Kahoots already done for you, and Of course, you have the members only Facebook group that was launched in June of 2018, and a support forum where you could post questions, add worksheets, or whatever you want. And there's also included there at the bottom a scope and sequence with a material list of everything that you're going to need throughout the year as you teach this curriculum. It was designed in a way that was supposed to help out with teachers who had a low budget. My first 6 years of teaching, I had no budget at all to work with, and I certainly didn't have a lot of money in my personal budget to supplement my classrooms. So I wanted to design a curriculum that was able to be taught by pretty much anyone that regardless of their circumstance. So some frequently asked questions that we get about the curriculum are, what are the benefits of joining the community? And basically the community will help save time. Instead of creating your own lesson plans and resources, everything you need is right here on the site in the members area. And when you join, you get access to all of those worksheets and resources and the community of teachers behind it. So in addition to that, the members resource forum, where you can share and view other members submitted resources, are all available for you to use. Another question is, do you accept purchase orders? And we do. So if you want to check out the purchase orders, you can find that on our full biology curriculum page. There's a link that shows you under FAQ, actually, that shows you where the purchase order page is. And those are the main questions that I wanted to cover. If you have any other questions, feel free to email me, brad@usbiologyteaching.com. Thank you for watching. And now for your bonuses, thank you so much for sticking around. Make sure you check these out. These are really awesome resources. I hope you learned something new today, and I hope that you get off to a great start to your year of teaching biology. So thanks again. Make sure to get your bonuses, you go to usbiologyteaching.com/webinar-bonuses. You can type it in just like you see it there. And if you want to check out a curriculum sample, you could go to usbiologyteaching.com/members area. The first 2 units are free to everybody who comes across them, and they're on experimental design, and will help you get started at least your 2 weeks out, so you can take care of all the opening day stuff that you need to take care of, knowing that you have your first 2 weeks already planned out. Even if you don't use anything else that we have, that's available to you to take advantage of. So thank you so much for watching this training. If you like the training, please share it with your colleagues and on social media. We really appreciate that. Leave some comments too, and make sure you check in with our Facebook page and our Facebook group. All those things really help keep this website going and help keep the resources fresh. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.